Hello everyone, how y'all doing? Philip here for another PS book reviews. Today we're going to talk about this book, William Gibson's Idoru. It's the second book on the Bridge series. I had just recently read the first book on the series, Virtual Light, and I already had ordered this one, so I went directly into this one. I had some mixed feelings on the first book. I didn't give it that much of a good rating, but this one surprised me a lot more, and I enjoyed it a lot more than Virtual Light. I will try to avoid spoilers as usual, but I will talk about some topics that will be referenced in the book. So if you like completely blind reading, you probably shouldn't be seeing this review, but I will avoid most of the direction narrative of the book itself, so you're safe in that regard. So overall, I liked this book more than Virtual Light. I thought Virtual Light was like extremely distanced from what William Gibson did on Neuromancer and the Sprawl series, and I really liked the Sprawl series. I was a bit disappointed in that regard. But I guess he also like approached it on a different way, and from what I read about the book, it was based out of a short novel that was to fantasize what the future of San Francisco Bridge, and the story spawned from there supposedly. So that kind of explains why it has a more grassroots feeling than this one. Grassroots in the term that's more about the population living there and the description of the environment than actually the story itself. This one I liked the story a lot more. It was a lot harder to figure out what exactly is happening, which was sort of what I liked from the Sprawl series as well. You have different characters and you see them progress their storyline, and you start to see where their paths are going to merge, but you still don't quite understand why the paths are merging and what's the big plotline twist or the ending that it's supposed to emerge from that, like the end goal of the whole thing. In this book in particular, we follow mostly two characters. One of them is Casey Laney, I think is his name. Really bad with names, and has this special skill that he can recognize patterns in flows of data, which is a very interesting topic. And we'll talk about data mining in a section. Let me just finish rounding up the main characters. So this is one of the main characters, and he talks a little bit about his past and his future. The way it connects with the original story from Virtual Light is through a contact that he has with Rydell, which is one of the main characters on the previous book. There's also an appearance by Yamakazi, which is another of the characters from the first book, but more of a secondary character, doesn't really have that much relevance. It also is not very relevant on this particular book, but he does have more prominent action in the whole storyline, let's call it that. A lot of new characters also included here. The other main character is Chia, I believe it's her name. I'm really bad with names. Yeah, Chia. Chia is her name, and she's like 13, 14-year-old kid that's just a big fan of this musician. And they end up finding a weird situation, and they hang out in this virtual environment online. She's part of this club of girls who love this band from Japan, but not just Japan. He has some other descent. Anyways, long story short, she ends up going on this journey to find out more about the band and this mystery that is surrounding the band, and a lot of things unfold that I will not spoil. So interesting topics that were mentioned in this book, particularly when you compare the date of release, which is 95, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check real quick. when you compare 96, when you compare the stuff that was released here in 96 with the stuff that we have nowadays, and what became true, what was prediction and became true, and what was prediction and sort of was not so accurate. On the previous book, it kind of felt like a very miss from the predictions that he did, especially with virtual reality. It didn't quite went the way he seemed to go. On this one, it sort of made a little bit more sense on the predictions that he went. And I'm talking about very specific things. First one is the whole data mining thing, which is one of the hidden talents that one of the characters has. Seeing nodes of information, being able to extract information from large pools of data. Back in 95, this wasn't very common. It was starting to become common, the concept of big data, which is large chunks of data, but data mining as a practice wasn't established. It became more established in the early 2000s, and on between 2000 and 2010. That's when data mining really became very prominent, and a job with a lot of people seeking it for different companies. So being a data scientist was not very common back in 95. I'm sure it existed already in some shape or another. I'm not sure where the inspiration came from William Gibson to have this sort of thing, but it's something that is very relevant, because the more data that we accumulate, and our society and technology allows us to grab so much data from so much stuff, it's really hard to extract the essential information out of it. And that's what pattern recognition is, and that's what these nodal points, as he calls it, refer to. It's like trying to find something specific out of this mass of information that would really take a long time to analyze everything through and try to think. So you try to infer knowledge out of a mass of information. So I thought it was very interesting to have a character that could do that natively as like a superpower kind of thing. The book gets a bit into the background of why he was able to do that. But nowadays we mostly use machine learning to do those kind of things, and machine learning has to be developed by humans having some knowledge of the context that you want to extract from the information. So it's interesting to see the way that Gibson imagined how this would progress and evolve into a skill that is highly sought. Another thing that I really enjoyed seeing was the reference to Russian Mafia that was already referenced in the Bridge series. On the first book of the Bridge series, I mean, there were some Russian infiltrated members in the police of the United States by reasons that weren't really explained in the book. And it seemed that really Russians were everywhere. They just went to other places, and they were always involved in security or police and stuff like that. And one of the excuses in Virtual Light was that it was in their blood from having lived in such a strong police state society for so many years under the Soviet Union. Nowadays it doesn't really hold up, but it's interesting how they have this how he managed to create this whole Russian mafia establishment that really bridges the whole world, and how Russian mafia seems to dominate the underground in the different countries. So I found that very interesting, and a nice link back to what was mentioned on the first book of the series. Another point that's worth mentioning is the use of virtual idols. Japanese virtual idols in particular, which was something that started back in the 90s. So this wasn't like a brand new idea from William Gibson. He just saw some information and tried to imagine how it would evolve. And I think he did very interesting predictions, because he predicted like holographic things being able to use with those virtual idols, which do happen nowadays. If you see concerts by Hitsune Miku, she's giving concerts to a whole stadium, and it's just a holographic display. So that concept of virtual idol did evolve in a similar way that Gibson predicted, and I found that very fascinating for a work that was written in 95, 96, or published in 96, probably written in 95. Another concept that I really enjoyed was the emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, which was a topic that he already approached a lot on the Sprawl series, and I think it was interesting that he gave it a different spin here. I really enjoyed that as well. The other concept that he approached was nanotech being used as a rebuilding block. In this case, he mentioned Tokyo being destroyed by this catastrophe, and nanotech technology was put to use to rebuild buildings that would just keep building themselves without major human intervention. But on this book, he sort of mentions also he goes into deeper imagination into that lore, and imagines things that can go wrong, and talks about different kind of glitches in the architecture and stuff like that, which I found very interesting, that and makes it a little bit more believable. Although nanotechnology has this very how do I say it? If you study nanotechnology, the principles behind it is said is a bunch of small computers that can replicate themselves and keep executing a certain task. And there was a great fear that this would, like, you would program the wrong thing and they would just replicate without any way to stop them anymore and just destroy things or do things that we were not expecting. The way that Gibson uses them, it feels like they can sort of ignore their current programming for a while and get reprogrammed into something else, or that would not, in my head, it didn't fit the logic of the destination of nanotechnology as I know it. I think nanotechnology that I studied was a lot more clinical, rigid than William Gibson's, but I guess it's also open to interpretation, and he didn't really explore it that much, so I could also have misunderstood a bit of the concepts he had behind it. But it was interesting to see it being mentioned as prediction that will be used for sure in the future, and we're not quite there yet to the point of having whole buildings made with nanotechnology, but it's definitely being used on different fields, mostly medicine and things like that. But yeah, nanotechnology is definitely interesting concept. So yeah, these were the points that I really enjoyed about the book. The story itself is really cool. It's very fast-paced, and it sort of reads like a thriller kind of novel where you reach the end of the chapter and you want to know what happens next. And but you're on the other characters. You have to read two whole chapters to figure out what happens to the chapter to the character that you are really wanting to know more about. And then you end up getting invested on the other character instead, and you end up going a lot of hours in a row just reading, trying to get to the end of the book to know all of the things. I really enjoyed the ending as well. I thought it was a lot better thought than stuff like, for example, on the Sprawl series. I remember being a bit disappointed with some of the endings. Only one ending in particular, but I'm not sure which book it is, so I'd rather not name anything. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed Idoru. I highly recommend it. I give it a 5 stars, and definitely became me a lot more interested in checking out All Tomorrow's Parties. That is the third book in the series, and checking out the rest of William Gibson's bibliography. I've seen that he wrote quite a few other things still from the 90s, but he's still active in 2000s. Yeah, I'm slowly catching up on his bibliography, and I'm not getting disappointed, so thanks for that. yeah, and that's all that I have from this video. Let me know what you think about the book, if you read it, if you didn't read it, if you agree or disagree with some of the things that I mentioned here. I'm up for discussing those kind of things on the comments below. So yeah, feel free to drop me a message. Anyways, that's it for now. See you next time. Bye bye, everyone. Take care.